Hey, this is Soke Dieter, Dieter School of Martial Science. How you doing? So we're here with Intro to Yellow Zone Fighting. Okay, like anything else, Yellow Zone Fighting is transitional phase. In my other video, we talked a little bit about this, and we're circling back to it in regards to ethics. Okay, so in Yellow Zone Fighting, our ethics are pretty clear because we have self defense. Okay, we have reasonable cause for self defense. Now, what I want to get into today is more about the combat mentality that you need to have. So, a lot of people uh, talk to me about, um, that I was just at an event in Phoenix, and it was a grilling competition. I was doing some event setup, tear down, just general go for shit, right? And somebody asked me about why I carry 4 or 5 knives on me. And I explained that each one of my knives has a purpose. One's a cutter, one's for stabbing, one's a utility knife, serrated. It could be used offensively, don't get me wrong, for a jagged wound. But it's pretty much what I use to open boxes and shit. And the other's for throwing, okay? And they asked me, why do you need that many knives? I said, well, I prefaced it. I said, I was a CQB instructor in the Army. So here's the deal. You want to have enough tools for the job. And each tool has its purpose. Okay? In Yellow Zone Fighting, this is really important because you want to control the tempo of the fight. You want to control when you're attacking, when you're defending, whether you're transitioning between the zones. Okay? So in Yellow Zone Fighting, you might want to have somebody get up off of you. You know, that's your throwing blade. Make them back up. You might want to change the tempo instead of being defensive. You might want to go to offensive, in which case you want a blade good for slashing, cutting. Um, later on we'll get into some poisons you can use to coat your blade and such. You have to be careful with that, because again, back to ethics. A judge will use the fact that you poisoned a blade to possibly argue premeditation. So you have to make sure you have a good explanation. Like, it makes sense to me if I'm carrying a blade. For defensive purposes, I want it poisoned because if I go up against somebody with a firearm, I only want to have to cut once because I'm only going to get one chance, and the neurotoxin impairs the ability to shoot. Right? It also prevents a threat to public safety because if I'm fighting with them and they shoot their gun, there's a chance their bullet could hit an innocent person. By utilizing a poison blade with a neurotoxin, you take away the advantage of the firearm and minimize the fact of a stray shot getting off. But you have to have those arguments already in place depending on the scenario in which you bring a poison blade into play. Remember, you don't have to bring it into play, hence the reason behind having multiple blades. Because then you can choose to leave the poison one in the sheath and fight with your non poison ones as the scenario demands. Um, so these are all a little bit of what you have to be thinking about when you go into a violent encounter with intention of surviving. In combat psychology, you have to have the willingness to cause harm. That's the first part. And the second part is you have to have a clear mind free of emotional contact, which sounds contradictory because obviously you're thinking to yourself, well, if I want to cause somebody harm, obviously I'm emotionally compromised. And the answer to that is In theory, yes. With training, no. Um, with training, you're able to separate your emotion from your will to survive. Okay? And that allows you to maintain a broad focus, both on protecting yourself and harming your opponent. And that takes, honestly, practice. There's only really one good way to develop that skill, and that's through sparring. I have a student named John, and you know, um, we would spar every day in class, and the reason behind that was I wanted him to get practice in with this idea of separating your emotions. And after he got hit or his technique was blocked, and he would start to get frustrated, of course, then he would get angry. And once he became angry, he got sloppy. His techniques were telegraphed. He was, focused so much on offense, he forgot about defense. Um, you know, there are several cases where he forgot to pull a punch. If it had connected, it could have caused real harm. These are all, very real things that you deal with. So if the first time you get into a fight is when your life is on the line, you're at an extreme disadvantage because you don't have any practice keeping your mind in zazen and no mind, keeping your mind clear. Um, and so a lot of martial arts teachers out here have one, maybe two sparring classes a week. So you go in there and you practice all these katas and forms and techniques and shit, and then you're never using it against an opponent except for 1, 2 days a week. As a result, it takes you a lot longer to achieve mastery, which is great for the guy that owns the dojo that you're training at, because that means he collects more money as you keep coming year after year after year after year. But it's not the most efficient way to train your disciples because, like I said, they need to practice. Um, that's why Krav Maga is a very good discipline. Hey, what just happened? Hello?